So I guess the first thing we should do, even though I kind of delved into it right before we started recording, and I heard you take a deep breath, and I was like, wait, save this, because this is going to be good. And it's sort of talking about the whole neoclassical versus romantic nature, and Miura delving in between both of those things. And we pulled up this, and I asked, is this neoclassical still, even though it abides in the fantasy realm? And you were beginning to explain why this would still classify as neoclassical.
Yes, this would most definitely classify as neoclassical, despite the fantastical elements. Because despite the image physically breaking the rules of reality, with Skull Knight cutting a dimensional rift in the scene, it's still, it could still be... It's like something that you could take a photograph of, and meaning is formed with a three-dimensional space between the characters, because you have them pushing forward into the y-axis if this was 3D, and y being forward, and so you have the large Zod shrinking smaller in the distance. And so I would say that it's less romantic because it's using physical geometry as its baseline for its rules. So that's my argument for this piece.
So I think the best way that and it was from you describing sort of neoclassical art, it was like statues, sculptures, or a picture that is a moment frozen in time. Yes. And this is, before doing this, we decided we would grab some of our favorite panels and pages from Berserk specifically. And this one, eventually, I think we'll delve into more because of the amount of detail that's in this page. But it is, I think, just one of the most iconic ones. It really is just a snapshot in time within the series.
It is. I think it's momentous on its own, and also when it's accompanied by the rest of the story that's taking place.
Okay, so what would you then say is a great example of a more romantic piece of Miura's?
More romantic piece? I think anything from the Eclipse, really.
Anything from the Eclipse?
Anything from the Eclipse is a good example of something more romantic. And I think I know that it's an easy criteria, but the smaller a character is within the frame, I think the more it adheres to something romantic.
Okay. Why is that?
Because the main thesis of romanticism is that humans are fragile, not in an Attack on Titan sort of sense, but in a cosmology sort of sense. No matter what belief system you adhere to, whether it's Christianity, whether it's any other religion that's present, fiction or real, you're kind of allowing yourself to be just a cog in the larger machine. But if you take note of something that is more neoclassical, the subjects are the heroes of the story. But if you take a piece like this, it's the scene that is the subject of the story. And we're mere puppets puppets or instruments to the rest of the space. And I guess the best example for that it's something that we talked about before, but Gustave Doré with his illustrations for the Divine Comedy.
Right. Or typically those illustrations, it's like, obviously you can pick out the character, but they're just completely enveloped in this massive depiction of hell, or whatever stage of hell that the character found themselves in the moment. So I guess I asked that question. I'm glad you made the clarification, because one of my other favorite panels that I brought up is the one Miura used as a reference to Devilman, the one of him getting ready to scream and sort of like, pounce on Griffith, for lack of a better term, and then he stops because of Casca. Would I be wrong to then look at the panels or the many pages of Berserk where Guts is expressing extreme anger and viewing that as a more romantic piece, or do you think the focus has to be more the scenery and not the character itself?
I think you're correct that it gravitates towards emotion, because if you look at neoclassical pieces, there's a level of stoicism present in it, that no matter how terrifying the world already is, there's a sense of cosmic justice. There's a sense of control that happens. But if you look at more romantic pieces, it's about nearly losing control of yourself, but still being able to hold on to something that may or may not be within you.
Okay, gotcha. So the entire Eclipse is just pretty much a showcase of Miura's more romantic art, which is like no one would ever describe the Eclipse, in the more logical sense, right? Like the more normal use of the romantic. No one would ever use that word, but pretty much every illustration in that is the most, I mean, it's the most form of like exaggeration, right? Whether you're looking at this page here that I sent of like the apostles getting ready to just destroy the rest of the members of the Band of the Hawk, or the very iconic panel where it's Griffith climbing the body of corpses. Yeah, and every moment in that, I think the eclipse is sort of the turning point as well, where Guts and his expressions, outside of moments in the Black Swordsman arc, become less human, adhere less to his normal anatomy.
That's true, yes. I definitely agree with that.
Okay, cool. So I see you pulled up what I'm assuming to be a more neoclassical piece.
Yes, that is a much more neoclassical piece. So this one is by Caspar David Friedrich. It's called The Wanderer. And I don't know if this is something that Miura, decided to do as a reference, but a lot of pieces that focus on the human spirit facing the inevitable or the unknown is highly associated with the romantic art movement, because it's about going past yourself. A lot of the neoclassical pieces, for example, this one by Jacques-Louis David in 1799. It's the intervention of the Sabine. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly. I have to warm up on that. But as you can see, it's a chaos, right? It's chaos represented on the screen. No, not the screen. Well, on our screen, but it's chaos on the canvas. But there is still a sense of order present here. There's a level of dynamism in which, despite all of the weapons raised, these characters are still able to glance at each other. But if you look at something that is more like this, it's like chaos versus the reduced level of humanity, or humanity reduced to something that asks the question, can you stand against this? Like, humans are not necessarily the subjects anymore. They're just part of the larger scene, to say the least.
I see. So the next question would pretty much be, how would you do this on a panel-to-panel basis, and sort of how did Miura go about using neoclassical art and romantic art from like sort of throughout the flow of the chapter, because one thing is like full finished big pieces like a painting, and another thing is a manga.
My understanding of this, having been an artist myself, is when you try to create a painting, you don't really think of the art movement that you're going for. I think you're really focused on the emotion that you're trying to convey and the story that you're trying to tell. And as you have the subject with those two components at the ready, your mind begins to wander to the best approximation of existing material that you've encountered. And so you reference those in your head, or maybe you look up sources. For example, if you're a fan of Berserk, so you scan through the pages, or if you're somebody like Miura who studied art history, then you look at all of these pieces, and from there you try to find the right tools, to find the right pigment, because every illustration is like a color that you wield and then combine together into its own palette. And so whether you're doing it as an illustration or as a manga, I believe that you're not really thinking about the art movement that you're going for. I believe, it's just my personal interpretation, that while Miura was creating all of these, he wasn't thinking, okay, I should go neoclassical. Okay, I should go more romantic. I think that what he did is simply tapping into his reserves, because there's something that we call an art library in our heads. So there's two. I think Proko spoke about this in one of his podcasts. He was talking about two things: art parents and the kind of visual library. So FCD, he's an instructor of illustration and concept art, and Proko is an instructor of more traditional atelier illustrations. So the art parent is something that Proko mentions. FCD mentions more the visual library. And so in order for Miura to have created this, he has both. And the fantastic thing about Miura is that he he hasn't limited himself to other mangakas in the field. For sure, he admired those people. He even knows some of those people. He's friends with them, right? He even has this his memorable image with Takehiko Inoue. But
Yeah.
Berserk is not just constructed from referencing other manga. It's created from referencing all of these other things that he enjoys, including classical pieces, romantic and neoclassical. And from there, I think that as he's shifting through the pages, he feels the emotion, he feels the story, and then he executes. And I think it's after he does the name or the storyboard, because name is what it's called in manga, or I think it's name, I'm not sure. As he's creating the storyboards, once he goes into orienting the detail, that's, I think, when he starts to stamp. I think that this is better presented with a neoclassical flair. I think Guts' rage is really stand out here, and so I have to pull on a romantic element. Am I making sense?
Yeah. So it'd be more accurate to say that, so the initial flow and thought process, because it's something that I bring up in the video as well, one of his interviews, the main thing that matters to him is obviously the logical consistency of the story, the plot, what's going on with the characters, but on a panel to panel basis as an artist, he cares about how he's able to make you feel something.
Yes.
And that's his goal.
Yes.
But his years of expertise and drawing, painting, and then doing art school, building up that library are the tools he's able to now touch into and tap into to then bring his goal about, which is making you feel something.
Yes.
And whether that's leaving you in awe with a more, like the Skull Knight, Femto, Zod piece, where you're just kind of like, whoa, or the various Guts images where it's just it's one of the best things about Berserk as a manga, and why I love it dearly to this day, even after all these years, is every time I visit it, like you can feel something. And that's a very special thing. So that makes a lot of sense. You were gonna look at the section of Casca panels where we get to see her and how she's sort of been managing the Band of the Hawk on her own now that Guts is gone and Griffith is captured.
Is there a specific question that you'd like to toss at me while I discuss this?
Not necessarily. I'm just sort of curious at your thoughts on why this whole scene works.
The reason I chose this as a specific example, because I think it highlights what a lot of people come to forget whenever they come back to Berserk. When you have discussions with your friends who are also fans of Berserk, oftentimes you gravitate towards the big scenes, right? Like how Guts killed the slug count, right? Or how Guts and Casca were able to survive the eclipse, and how Skull Knight did all those badass moves and whatnot. But what we tend to forget that if not for Miura's ability to convey slower, more quiet scenes, those impactful moments would absolutely not matter at all. And so I think that these scenes are as important as those bigger, more bombastic pieces. And the reason I brought this up, because I think it's a fantastic case study of all of those more quiet moments that act as tendons to the bones of these act as tendons to the more larger impact moments. And so I think that this is a good case study for pretty much the 11 points that I've gathered as to what makes a page work out. And the first is how a page stands on its own. So as we look through these pages, and we're not even reading, I'm not reading the text right now. I'm just going through each of them as I hope that the recording is capturing. And as you could tell, we already have a good inclination towards what the pages are trying to tell us, right? You have a very relaxed scene as opposed to something like this, with the harsh speed lines, with the details being obscured by the motion. You could tell that this is more action heavy. Meanwhile here, you could gander at each of the panels, and then there's a little story that it tells. So the first is, how does a page stand on its own? Is it something that you could look at and understand right away? The second is how each of the page connects with the rest of the story. how the last panel makes you want to turn the page, how it makes you feel invested just by staring at each of the situations that the characters are in. And the third is how immediate the page recognition of the information is without gliding over the page. Because it's one thing to look at the page, and it's another to start to go, okay, first panel here, second panel there, third panel there, and so on and so forth. There's also sequential clarity, because if we look here, to somebody who's read manga many times, they might feel like it's natural to just glide your eyes from the first panel, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. But to the uninitiated, they may not necessarily understand right away, especially with manga from a Western perspective. They may even be confused. Do I read this from left to right? Like, even if you've been reading for quite a while, after you flip the page, you're still a little bit confused sometimes. And this is from my own personal experience and from friends that I've encountered who tried to read manga or comics for the first time. They were like, how do you read this? And that's the tricky thing. A lot of artists can, and pardon my French, a lot of artists can fuck up the organization of the panels. And so I think sequential clarity is immensely important, which is the fourth point. So that there's clarity despite the ambiguity of panel order. So even if we look here, even if we're not sure which one comes first, you have a rough idea that it's a woman in mourning, that it's a woman broken who's just trying to eat her porridge and she collapses. Because you have this fantastic separation between these stacks of information in these smaller panels and this larger illustration at the bottom. So even if you don't understand what's going on here, which one comes first, just the idea that once you look at the page from afar, you get to see that this sequence comes first before this. And even if you don't think about that, the way Miura causes your eyes to trickle down, because Casca's eyes are looking down here, the spoon is falling, it makes you look at the page as a downfall. That's how you emotionally understand it, even before you logically understand it. So the fifth point that I have after the first four is that something that we can call productive ambiguity. Everything that I mentioned just kind of belongs to that. It's a little ambiguous, but you make sense out of it. I want to show you some pages of some very terrible paneling, mostly from the 90s era of comics, but that would be kind of hard to do. I'm not sure if I could pull those references right away.
I thought you were going to do something really funny and then just pull out Devoro Chapter 0 and just fucking just dunk on me like a motherfucker. I was but okay.
That's not what I'm trying to do, but here, I think this is a good sample. I just did a quick Google search and I just pulled it right away, and like, what's going on here? Like, pardon to whoever made this, and I'm really sorry that we're using you as an example, but what is going on here? What emotion is being said? Like, we could start there. What emotion is this piece allowing you to feel? Is the confusion the intention? Because if you want to confuse the audience, then you have to be sure that that's what you're trying to do. But if you're trying to tell a story and you end up confused, well, I think something terrible is happening. And to go back to Miura, this is a fantastic counterexample of how he does that. For a majority of Berserk, he allows for you to just, for example, here, you get to feel the setup right away. Even if you don't understand what's going on, you intuit it. So the first, to summarize so far, we have the first is that the page stands on its own. The second is that the page connects with the rest of the story. The third is that there's immediate page recognition of information without needing to glide over the page. The fourth is sequential clarity, or even if there's not a complete clarity because of the audience level of education in reading a comic book, there is productive ambiguity and they're not disoriented. And the sixth is the ability to cushion those moments of difficulty in reading. And 6 is kind of just an extra point for 5. And the seventh that I'd like to talk about is it's much more difficult to illustrate quiet scenes than high octane tension. To an amateur, this is much easier to do rather than this. And
Okay. Why is that?
why is that? I think I'd like to pull out. This is by Every Frame a Painting, and I love that he uses this example from David Fincher's Seven. So this is non-spoilers, but this is a talking scene in that film. And the video essay by Every Frame a Painting, and it's called And the Other Way is Wrong. Here, I'm just gonna screenshot this there. It's by Every Frame a Painting. He pretty much just discusses how the camera shifts from wide shot to medium shot to close up, and when such things happen, and how it affects the narrative. Because to somebody who doesn't know what the meaning of the scene is, they could pretty much just stick to this. Or to somebody who's less skilled, they would opt to use close-ups the entire time. And it doesn't really amplify the point of the story. I'd like to cite this this video for the rest of the discussion, but I'm not sure if I can play this, so let's just leave it at that. So if you look at combat scenes, you just have to draw the punch. You just have to draw the kick. You just have to make it look cool and then have it be done for. For sure, there's still a sense of composition that needs to be done, but for moments like this, when do you shift from Judo's perspective to Casca's perspective? When do you have Judo and Casca in the same panel? When do you zoom out? When do you zoom in? When do you finally let the scene breathe? These are integral questions that have to rely on the artist and author's understanding of human psychology. Because as you're reading through something like this, you don't really think about the camera shot, right? You just read through it and you're like, oh, she's sad, he's happy, so on and so forth.
Right.
But if you're on the author's side of things, you have to try and figure out, should I capture Casca's stoicism with this panel? Do I capture her musing? Do I show it with a finger to the chin? Do I show it with a tension in her posture? And how do I break this ponderous moment with an intrusion of a friend? And do I showcase this from Casca's perspective and show Judo's face? Or do I let this three-panel setup collate better by having the focus entirely on Casca? And magnify Judo's intrusion by having him as a shadow. So this is something that you could think about, like, what if I drew this page? How would I do this? So, and then once we've established that Casca's thinking has now been interrupted, we can now zoom in completely on Judo. And then once we've established that Judo is being accepted into the fray, that Casca is accepting his presence, we now illustrate them together in the same space. And then afterwards, we now put them in the same frame, tighter together, to show that they're on equal terms. And then this is how I would examine this page, and it's beautifully done. And it connects with this, and it connects with this. How so? Because if we look at this, this is pretty much an establishing sequence. We show that the Band of the Hawk is in absolute disarray. They are in despair, they're wounded, they're sick, they're hungry. And how do we bridge this entire page to Casca? By focusing on her tools, her equipment, her elements, probably the focus of her attention, which is this map. How do we know that it's the focus of her attention? Because it's in a POV. And then we zoom out, and then she is pondering on it. These are things that you don't necessarily think upon when you're reading the manga, and you're just skimming through the pages, or maybe on your phone even. These don't register to you until you sit down with it. And it's just, I can't commend Miura enough for how much thought is put into these quiet moments. Am I making sense so far?
No, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of the little details that a lot of people don't realize until if they ever even try it for themselves. It's legit like, oh, I can't just do close up after close up after close up after close up. I have to be able to ground the scene. I have to be able to introduce the characters. You have to, there's so much thought that goes into the things surrounding a scene that in reality make it and allow for the reader to, it's a little ironic almost. It's kind of like the author and the mangaka's intent in allowing for this information to be communicated as smoothly as possible is also the vehicle in which people take it for granted and just kind of don't pay attention to it, you know? And I guess that's, I could see why that would make writing a quiet dialogue scene much harder than some high impact action scene, even though most people might think the opposite at first.
I think you worded it out correctly, because good stories help you feel relaxed. And I don't mean this in the sense that there's tension and all that. What I mean by relaxed is that you're completely in the story. You don't think about the shots. You're not pulled out by, oh my god, that's if it's film, you think that's green screen, that CGI stands out. Or if we go back to manga paneling, what the hell is going on? You don't end up thinking about that, because that really kicks you out of the story. And Miura doesn't make that mistake. Maybe somebody would cite a counterexample where they were reading and it's a little more difficult to understand, but by my own personal experience, such is not the case. So yeah, those are the points so far. So the 7th was quiet scenes are more difficult versus high octane action. The 8th is, I think, to tie it back to what we were talking about with regards to your question, how does Miura choose between neoclassicism versus romanticism? And the 8th point is, as an author and a mangaka, how do you go about wielding fine art versus functional storyboarding? Because these are more storyboarded scenes. Every panel is a storyboard. But how does an author like Miura suddenly decide to do this? How does he make peasants out of his audience?
Yeah.
And so
dude, the stretch he was on during that, like, I'll put him up on screen now, but the stretch he goes on at the end of Millennium Falcon is the most whip your dick out and just show it to everybody, because it is nonstop. It is absurd. It's genuinely, whatever, man. whatever, dude. Whatever. Yeah, sure.
The reason I pulled up... No. I completely agree with you. The reason I pulled this up is because even with here, originally I was just supposed to talk about this, but I felt like the scene was so incomplete without the context that it had. And the same thing here, even though this is just the page before, the 2 pages before, I think it does a really good job in illustrating why Miura, at least for me, chose to go about this way. What chapter is this again?
That one, the Zod Skull Knight Femta one,
is
at
this
the top of
3?
Ganishka. 303.
303. Okay, let me...
Around 303, yeah. If not 303 exactly.
So my understanding of this, especially revisiting this story after a while, and of course in the context of everything that's going on, I think context is such an important word for analyzing all of this, because sure, you could take a step back and gravitate towards the first point. How does the page stand on its own? I think it's heavily communicated right away. Look, this is Ganishka pretty much. Look at how much space he takes up. I understand that the rest of the page is probably also Ganishka, but in the context of the previous pages, this is essentially him. If we just look at this page alone, it shows how meaningless he's become in the face of all of this, and there's just this turning of the tables that's supposed to happen, or it's making you wait for that to happen. And so if we go back here, this is the point in the story where powers have really mutated, powers have really reached their apex, and it's now a dominance competition. It's an alpha male competition. It's as The Rock would say in Black Adam. It's the hierarchy of the power is about to change. This is exactly that as it's going on. And it's also told from the perspective of Ganishka and how he's struggling with with this level that he's attained. There's consequences attached to this level that he's achieved, and how even with how powerful he's become, Femto with the ease just surpasses him. And how do you best represent that than by having Femto dominate the page? Imagine if instead of doing this, he creates this panel right here. Let's do a little experiment. Imagine if he just added this panel here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and have this as the 6th panel. Imagine how much the impact is reduced. Some artists, and I've read a lot of comics, and I've done these little studies, and I was like, why did they choose that? Why did they choose to draw such a momentous scene in a panel, in a small panel, instead of allowing it to breathe? And I think breathing is something that a mangaka should allow their I sound so capitalist. Allow their illustration to breathe, you know?
Yeah.
Their works to breathe. So in this case, if we do that a little test again, so you're wondering what's going to happen. You wonder whose hand is this. You wonder how beautiful this hand is. And then suddenly you have this opposition that takes place. It's the literal op in front of Ganishka. And then he does the same thing because it's a competition of powers. They're currently in a Trinitarian dispute. You have the first power, which is Ganishka. You have the second power, which is Femto. And notice what Miura does. He reserves one page to build the momentum of somebody approaching, and then he does the reveal. And with the revelation present, he does it again. He reserves another full page to introduce the arrival of another power that could supersede the first power that has arrived. And I think that just goes to show how much Miura really understands the emotion of the scene, and then pulls from his visual library and decides, okay, I think this has got to be a banger of an illustration. I think that I really have to spend time creating this 2-page spread to showcase how the tables might turn and the significance of that. So at least that's my understanding and interpretation of this.
Gotcha. Okay. So that would be point 8.
Yes, that would be point 8. And the 9th point, and I'd like to go to this, where Rosine saves Jill away from the demonic guts, is something that we call reader agency. I think reading is far more interactive than we give it credit. I think that it has features that video games have that we don't really consider. Because when we read something, especially if you have a physical copy of a manga, is the story doesn't move until you move. It's the same with playing a video game. The character and the entire game doesn't move until you press forward with the controller. So even with this, you're paying attention to the relationship of these two characters, one potential victim and one questionable initial friend and now antagonist. And you get to see what's to become of them and their overall relationship with Guts. What is Guts gonna do? How is Guts gonna deal with this? And if we imagine that we're holding a physical copy right now, we're greeted by this 2-page spread. And it's either we stop the moment in time and let the scene breathe and assess the romantic tendencies of this. And I'm not talking about a Jill X Rosine. I'm talking about an art period kind of romantic. We could feel this as we could all of the other pages. And this is something that you could physically do with all other pages. And not just with Berserk, but with all manga, with all comics. But the beauty with manga is that it has less panels than your standard American comic book, especially with the French. I've read some French comic books and they usually have 11 to 15 or even 16 panels per page. But manga often has 6. Even with this seems like a packed illustration. This seems like a packed page, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's still 6 panels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 panels. Even with something like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've seen French illustrations. I think I sent you one of them, and they still do it so exceptionally well. But it's a great counterpoint to the momentum that manga creates. And so you get to pause time more strictly. You have more control of the time because each page flip is a moment. as opposed to something like American or French comics in which each page is a sequence, not a moment. Let me pull a good example of that. So French and Italian, pretty much European comics. This is by Roberto Ali. And notice that this page could pretty much be 3 minutes. We don't even have the dialogue yet. Even if each of them just has one text bubble per panel, that still would probably be 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, and that's going to total to 2 to 3 minutes for this. That's just one page. Here's another one. You have the establishing shot, which in cinematic terms, this could be from anything from 1 second to 5 seconds. Then you have this, and it's, again, it totals 1 to 2 minutes. That's the rule in Western comics. But for manga, we have shit like this. And mangaka do it many times over, as opposed to Western comics. Like if you read Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb's Hush, they reserve 1-page spreads like once per comic. So that's like 1 comic spread, 1 to 2 comic spread, 1 to 2 page spreads, 1 to 2 page spreads per 24 pages. But when you read the manga, you would end up with something like this. Notice how many full page spreads are there in just a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. And that's why I brought up the point 9, which is reader agency, is when you read manga, every page turn is a push forward with the controller. There's so much more control with manga, and that's why I think it's really highly interactive. As opposed to this, you get a quick gander right away of everything that's going on. And I think the effects are different. There's still some agency to it, but I would say that it's not equally afforded to the reader as it is in Eastern comics or manga. And the 10th point that I'm going to go for, which is more like a sub point to point 9, is that page turning is a design tool. For example, here, actually even with any of these examples, even with here, you're restricted to what's going on until you flip the page. And a less experienced, a less skilled mangaka or illustrator or comic book author will have a tough time deciding when to ask the reader to turn the page. And I think it requires a great skill to see the story overall as a full issue and overall as a full chapter, and also in its more micro scale on a moment-to-moment measurement, and then to be able to connect them all together and then decide, when do I go for this? When do I go for this? So the page turns is something that you're installing into the issue. It's the sense of control that you're giving the audience. And if you do it correctly, you will end up with a sense of timing that the audience can have to let them fully immerse themselves in the moment. I'm not sure if I'm making sense. I hope I am.
No, yeah, you are. I think it's one of the things that I mean, a lot of great manga do it, but it's sort of the idea of leaving a question for the very last panel and then giving the answer on the next page in the first panel of the next page, or giving a piece of the answer and then giving the more full reveal on the next page. It's going back to your points about sort of reader agency and the feeling of it being a little more interactive, where it's like you are... It's interesting because, say, somebody's reading through a sequence where it's like, you know, they're getting a little bit of the reveal or a little bit of the question. They themselves can stop and go, wait, is this going to be what I think it is? And then they can turn the page and answer the question, which would be, yeah, like that's a great moment. Like, it's like, no way, that's not who I think it is. Boom, right there.
I like that. Yeah. You're allowing the reader to pose questions. Each panel is a question. That's beautifully worded. Yeah, I agree with that.
They can dwell in the cliffhanger as long as they want, unless obviously it's, you know, a chapter ending and, you know, Berserk in its hiatus, but within the chapter itself, you know.
I find it fascinating. Imagine if Miura did this.
Dude, that shit. It is crazy to think how much that kind of makes me upset, and how grateful I am that he didn't do that.
Imagine
if it's all on one page. One of the most important things, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think one of the most important things, it's kind of like in sports, like we all have peripheral vision. You know, and I think it's a little small detail of not taking your audience's intelligence for granted. It's like, oh, well, they might not see it until they look down. They have peripheral vision. You know, if you really care about a big reveal, save it for the next page. And Miura does a sick job of doing that so many times, so many times. And considering that his priority is the emotion, it is like, oh man, you know, it's huge. It's just huge.
Imagine if it's up like this.
Fuck.
It's still a reveal.
Oh
Right.
man.
Right?
Oh, that's not even funny. That's evil.
It does the job, right? Does the job.
Oh man.
Yeah,
But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Because I've read amateur manga, and I'm not talking about yours. I'm talking about my students because I taught in university, so I've seen a lot of different works, and I understand the story that they want to tell. And you know, if I ask for them to stand up and tell me the story, and I could feel the emotion in their voice, and I'm affected by the potency of the story. And then when I look at their pages, I'm like, why did you make these specific decisions? And it destroys what your story can be. And I ask them why, and they don't know why they made such decisions. And that's something that I think that's why you have to expand your knowledge on things. And it's not wrong to write. I think that you should write and read and write and read. I think it's wrong to just write and not have anything to reference. And I think that if anybody wants to be an author or an artist, especially since I've been doing this for quite a long time, it's a fault of my own as well. Sometimes I just look at illustrations for days and then I don't touch my pencil or my pen, and then I'm frustrated why I have a hard time putting images on the canvas. It's because I haven't articulated the things that I've absorbed. And I think that's a good balance that anybody who wants to jump into this field should have. That you read enough and then you create enough. You read enough, you create enough.
Yeah, I'm curious if, and I want to know if you would say this is a good observation, just sort of thinking about all the things that you've been saying. It almost feels like when it comes to laying out a page or laying out the story through images with manga and comics, it sort of needs to be handled like a conversation. So, for example, like me doing what I do for work, if I wanted to talk about somebody who passed away, I wouldn't say the sentence in the video like, so-and-so went into the grocery store and then the next day he died. Even then I gave it a little pause, but let's say I rushed through it more. So-and-so went into the store and the next day he died. Sure, you could say it like that, but how much better would it be if you hung on it a little more? You know, so-and-so went into the grocery store. Then the next day, he died. You allow things to, you know, you hang on the moment a little more. The only reason I would rush through it would be if I was trying to make it a comedic moment or give it a comedic undertone. Do you think that'd be a fair way of sort of laying out the issue that tends to occur, and sort of why the best mangaka, they are sort of able to, through their images, tell you a story, and not just tell you the story, tell you it with emotion, allow the big reveals to hang, sort of like you would if you were trying to narrate a story and make it interesting.
Yes. I think that's immensely important. I think it's something that I briefly touched upon earlier about breathing, and I think you perfectly encapsulated it with something that you've been doing for a long time as well, and something that is your work, that we fail to communicate what we really mean when we just bum rush through things. And the pauses are as important as the words. And to turn it into, to go back to manga, the images are as important as the sequencing. Even with here, it's barely noticeable, but if we examine this, look at how thin the barrier is here versus here. It's so subtle that if you're uninitiated to manga, it may or may not register with you. I hope it does, but this is a quick method to separate this order of event versus here. Even with this specific image, there's still some breathing room that he's made present, even separating this entire emotion, because another artist could have done this as Casca saying thanks, and then afterwards she could have just fallen asleep here in one panel and not have any of these at all. It's still the same message. It's still the same thing with you saying that he went to the grocery store and then he died, right? I think it's not just the pause. It's also the little tidbits that you decide to add. Like he went to the grocery store. A few hours passed. Nobody had heard of him. His mother called. His wife called. They could not find him anymore until finally their phone rang. It was the police. I'm sorry, your husband's died.
Yeah. Just the way that you would add narrative details if you were to verbally communicate a story, it kind of falls upon the responsibility of the mangaka or the comic book illustrator or whoever's doing this to add those details as well and keep it in mind when laying out a scene.
Yes.
Okay. So those would be the first 10 points. There's an 11th, right?
Yeah, the 11th. And I'm gonna shit on Manhwa a little bit here. But
feel free. I'm sorry. This is gonna please feel free because I know that there's a filter on sites and stuff and that. Like you can go into the settings and then make it only manga. That shit should be in the front page. Any of you any of you fuckers out there that run a manga reading website or any sort of that shit, you need to have the turn off manhwa button on the front fucking page. If I go to try to find good manga one more time and I see the hero who jumped through his own asshole and reincarnated, I'm gonna lose it. I'm sorry. Please feel free to shit on manhwa for a little moment. I'll just sit back and let you go at it, champ, please.
All right, so manhwa is comparatively, relatively a newer form of storytelling. It's popularized by the Koreans, at least with my current knowledge. And let me just do a quick Google check so that I don't ridicule myself.
Yeah, no, you're right. Manhwa's Korean.
Manhwa is Korean.
Manhwa, which is Chinese, which is
manhwa,
HU,
yeah,
I think.
HU.
Yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of people here, hopefully, are familiar with how manhwa is done.
Well, yeah, it's like Webtoons, the main website, but you could find them anywhere.
Yeah, so like this is an example, and this is just a random one that I pulled. It's called it's a beginner's guide to making a webtoon or something like that. Do you have a specific webtoon in mind?
I know a lot of porn ones, but those are actually pretty good with their paneling. So I won't. Those don't count.
God damn it.
Well, I feel like the Boxer does a pretty good job.
Okay.
What's one that I would say I read and I wasn't too hot about? There's this one about the skeleton who fucking comes back to life. I forget the fucking name of it now, man.
There's one that my friend was reading. Is it called Lookism? I don't know if you've heard of that.
Lookism, that's a popular one.
Yeah. So I just grabbed a random chapter. I mean, just from these two examples alone, you could see the restrictions that have been created by the format. And the format is the phone. So you cannot, because of its size, you cannot pack so much data into the phone. When you look at websites, for example, Facebook or YouTube, they have to design it in such a way that you have enough information but not too much. When you look at YouTube on your computer, and I'll just pull up YouTube as a quick sample. So this is just my front page. So this is something that you get to see right away, right? So you have so much videos that are present. I'm going to click on Watchmen. Not any of the more.
Click on the top left one. Okay, continue. I see we've been going down the same rabbit hole.
Yeah.
All right.
So here.
Okay.
So you look at Watchmen, and you get to see an entire tab of videos right away on your right side, and you scroll down a little bit, and you have an adequate amount of space to read comments right away, right?
Yeah.
But if we hit F12 and then view it from, what do you call that? If we view it from a mobile point of view, and this is replicating a Samsung S8, this is what YouTube would look like.
Okay.
And you have to scroll so much before you get to the comment section. And it just splits your experience entirely.
Okay. Yeah.
So manhwa is essentially having to do an Android formatting for the storytelling. And you have to some way bypass all of that. And all benefit, I'm gonna give all credit to the ingenuity that they tried to apply with this format. It is accessible. You get your phone, you boot up a story, whatever it is, whether they're reincarnated as a little toddler in the Aztec Empire, I don't know. So you go there.
What an insane story. All right, okay.
And then you die in the next day because you've been marked as child sacrifice. It's a one chapter, one shot. Don't worry. So,
You shouldn't be laughing at this. Okay, all right. Ooh. All right.
So the point is, they've. I'm gonna give them the credit, or credit is due. You're on the train. You're in the commute. You don't have a large bag, so you just pick up your phone and then you read. And so the story is conveyed. I get that. So plus points to that. It's a different level of interactivity. But the great disservice to both the author and the reader is the lack of creativity and artistic level that is lost when you strip the storyboarding from the page. That is the immediate thing that comes to mind. You want to do this? I don't think you can. It becomes translated into something else. Maybe there's an artist somewhere that's capable of limiting things into 16:9 aspect ratio. Maybe, but there's only so much that you could add into it. Because if you pick up a manga page and it's not just restricted to Berserk, we could cite so many other artists out there. I think the format just allows for your mind to wander, for your mind to really think, how do I surprise the audience? How do I make them immerse themselves in 6 panels per page for the next 16 pages and suddenly surprise them with a full thing, something that they could just completely glance upon, versus something like this, where this is already this is your entire mobile screen. That's roughly the size of your entire mobile screen. And so as you're scrolling down, and look at how I'm sorry, but look at how obnoxiously big that dad is.
Okay. Yeah. I'm following.
And imagine opening up a manga page, and this is what you're surprised with.
This looks like Femto is about to blast this child with the fucking sunbeam. Oh man, this is what goes on in the Aztec one shot. Fuck. Oh man. No, but I think I understand what you're saying.
Because okay, but if we take this, because what manhwa essentially does is it takes one page as one scroll.
Right. It's a far more.
It's a simplified storytelling method. And how do manhwa artists create those breathing sections? They literally
big stretches of white.
They just literally take this. So imagine buying a manga and you flip 3 pages and it's just white space.
Right, unless it was a super emotional moment where like the time, but even then certain series handled that very, very differently. Like Land of the Lustrous is very good with negative space and stuff like that. Yeah, I will say I do think manhwa do benefit from its format, in particular when it comes to certain psychological series that I've read. There was one called Beetle Hands that I think did a good job of not just, doing pure white as its transitional periods in between. But I think action is what really is allowed to still maintain a good flow with the scrolling, but I do get what you're saying. Like if we go back to the more subtle moments of dialogue scenes, it can be, it's just, and again, credit where credit's due, because they are working in a very, very limited format, but
that's true.
Keyword limited.
I'm not entirely angry at them, because all art evolves. That's why we have art periods. And it's funny because we've been talking about neoclassicism and romanticism. When romanticism is a reaction to neoclassicism, a lot of artists felt that this is too restrictive, and so they wanted to, like, fuck it, I'm gonna express myself in a way that's counter to this. They didn't want highly organized sequences where there's foreground, midground, and background. They didn't want to have completely mathematical illustrations. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to have something that is felt, that you just gaze upon it, and it's like walking to the edge of an actual cliff and then feeling with the breeze in your hair and the waves below your feet. That's what they wanted to express. And the movement before them was completely against that, because it was about packing as much academic insight into the illustration as one could. And the romantics were like, what if we still master the fundamentals but change the execution of this? And that's essentially what manhwa is to manga. Maybe from their perspective, they're like, I want people to be able to use their phones and read our stories. How do we do that? Well, we do this. And so credit to where credit is due, that they're just evolving with what is given to them. And I still want to be fair about all of that. But just in comparison to the medium that requires more skill, I will hand it over to manga 100%. There's just so much.
And I also think, just to be fair, like you said, manga was a relatively new medium, and manga's been around since, my God, I mean, technically it's been around since the late 1800s, but like manga as we know it has been around since the 50s,
50s,
post World War II.
Yeah,
post World War II, and then obviously Tezuka starts coming around in the 60s, and it's really the 80s and 90s where we get a boom of sort of individual style and creativity, because again, they just now had 20 to 30 years of the people before them who started breaking ground in their own small ways. But I guess the next major point, and I'm really excited to tackle it when it comes to Miura and his artwork, is light versus dark.
Yeah,
because that is always something that is going to be a recurring topic when Berserk is talked about, whether it's the story, whether it's the themes, and whether it's the art. And I would argue part of what makes Berserk what it is the unity that is found with all of those three things when it comes to light and dark, and the way that the story goes about presenting it. And before I let you, go ahead and kind of explain it and talk about certain points, I do want to it was an observation that I sort of made, although I had kind of been realizing it while I was rereading it for this video topic in specific. But when we were looking at all of those Femto Skull Knight pages and kind of the stuff leading up to it, what's really fascinating is that Griffith, throughout the entirety of his run, when he's brought back, is introduced, and almost every panel surrounding him, he's pure white. It is. You have the initial one where he comes back, which I'll send here, and then you have the one after that, and then you have the one after that, and then obviously you have the Hill of Swords, which is a very white scene, a lot of white going on, and then here I apologize because I'm going to spam you quite a bit.
No, dude.
But pretty much all of these moments, it's almost like Miura does a 200 chapter buildup of obviously the Hawk of Light, so he wanted to visually convey this, but I think it lends to why the femto shot when he's on top of Ganishka hits so hard, and it's because literally every moment where Griffith is doing his conquest or is in the present, there, I think, fails to be a moment where he isn't illustrated in pure white. And again, whether that's just him or everything surrounding him, but it is legit just non-stop shots like this, and then, skipping ahead a bit, we get this. There's this one moment where there's a slight hint of darkness, but even then it's like very, very lightly grayed. And then finally, once we get to the shot, eventually we get the true Griffith, which is the femto shot. And obviously the big contrast people point to is how Guts is illustrated throughout all of this, and more so not just throughout all of this, but really the arc beforehand as well, where Guts is constantly surrounded by darkness. And obviously it's fair to say that he took a lot of this from Devilman, and the depiction between the two main characters of that series. But what are your thoughts on Miura's usage of light and dark within his art, and how it ties to the story thematically, in comparison? Because we talked about Claymore, even though Claymore has some great art, especially as it goes on, it does seem a lot more hesitant to use dark tones as much. And one could argue that when it comes to using heavy black or using moments of contrast, there might not be anybody better than Miura, outside of, you could argue, Shinichi Sakamoto, and then I was gonna say maybe Murata, if you wanted to throw that name in there as well. Kubo does a pretty good job as well, but Kubo's
great at it. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, what are your sort of thoughts on that then, Miura's usage of light and dark, and kind of how it's something that is a staple of his, and how he manages to pull it off, and sort of the nuances of how it's used. Because I look at it and I'm just like, damn, this is a dark fucking page. I mean, obviously there's more to it when I talk about the actual story, but I don't really have the artist perspective of using it and when not to use it. And like if you just scroll through what seems like a collage of Berserk panels, it's fucking crazy how he seems to just be able to use it, but there isn't clarity that's lost.
Do you want me to reply to this from mostly an artistic perspective, or do you want me to calibrate my response in accordance with something more psychological, perhaps?
I would say you're the artist perspective first, and then maybe if you want to get into the psychology of things a little more. But I definitely think it'd probably be best to start with the more art-driven points.
I think it's going to be weird, but I think I'm going to pull out a quick discussion on interior design, or at least houses. What's the color of your room? Like, what's the color of the walls in your room?
White.
How does it make you feel? As opposed to, for example, if we painted your room black or tones of gray.
It would feel more... I know it'd feel more claustrophobic.
Yeah.
More closed in. And I know that because I had to, when I was visiting a family member, we renovated his bathroom, and the sort of clarity or the sort of... It's strange because like the walls were because this is a home in Puerto Rico, so the walls are made of different material and stuff, but like the light bulb wasn't working as well anymore. The walls needed to be repainted. It felt a lot cleaner when you stepped in once it had been renovated and the walls were freshly painted white and light was allowed to enter. It felt, you didn't feel like you had to like close your shoulders in almost when you stepped in there anymore. There was openness. It felt like there was openness.
There was openness when you guys painted it white, right?
Yeah. When we repainted it white.
Yeah. So I'm bringing this up because I think that's why Miura uses white for these specific panels regarding Griffith. And from an artistic perspective, he wants to invite you in. he wants to make it look as clean as possible, to look as beautiful as possible. I know that that's something that's incredibly, that like maybe unanimously discussed among enthusiasts of Berserk, right? Like it's intentional that Griffith is supposed to be this awe-striking individual. Like he's supposed to be the most beautiful thing on the planet currently. At least that's how he wants to be presented. And what's the better way to do that than to envelope him with white, in the same way that if you enter a room and it's white colored, you want to stay there. You feel welcome. You feel like, and especially with the curves that he uses and the bird motif that's been established ever since Griffith first appeared on the page. Not Femto, but Griffith has been wearing this bird-like armor, and it's even more emphasized when he's reborn. And so there's a sense of ascension to it, and the soft curves of his hair, I think they're all specifically chosen to make you want to ascend with him. It's an image that is quite angelic, and we go back to Gustave Doré and his illustration of angels, and I think that specific tradition of the cherub when it's done in religious paintings, the soft curves when you drown something in very bright colors. And of course, we're limited to manga, and so the closest thing to a bright color is literally just white. So I think that's the reason that Miura chose this specific art direction for him. And I think the purpose for that is, my understanding of this is, Miura wants to be confrontational. He wants to subvert things in the same way that, like, Gonagai made it distinctly clear that Lucifer or Satan is going to be the pretty boy of the story, and then you have Devilman, who's the rough guts of the story, right? And I'm not sure what comes first, the Japanese realization that there's so much meaning in this Christian story, or is it something that comes from their own experiences and they just seem to find that Lucifer is the best analogy for that story. That's something that I'm not really sure I have the answer for. But I think that Gonagai and Kentaro Miura, and I could speak more for Miura because of how Berserk seems to pull a lot from, shadow integration. This is something that we talked about before with Jungian psychology, is that I think both Gonagai and Kentaro Miura have tapped into the collective unconscious, and how these archetypal stories of good versus evil and how they're represented, and the Christian story of the fall and Paradise Lost, John Milton's Paradise Lost, and the meaning of that, of the subversion of good and evil through representation. I think it impacts his choices here tremendously. So I think Miura wants you to wants us. I think he wants us to question what is good, even if our senses are telling us that it is good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want clear answers. I know that maybe from somebody who's read and reread Berserk, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, Griffith is evil, right? But what if we just took a specific page or panel and showed it to somebody who doesn't know anything? Like, what are they going to say? And what if a person like this really rises up among our ranks and then wields his sword and his speech and with his long flowing hair and his charisma? Are we going to be subservient to such an individual? I think that's the question that Miura is posing. How do we respond to the call of beauty when the intent behind that beauty is absolute atrocity? Where is the line? Is there even a line? And I think the beautiful thing about Berserk is, and I know that a lot of writers and video essayists and even you yourself have discussed, is how Guts is that self-reflection of ourselves. Guts is that internal confrontation, while I think Griffith is that external confrontation. And I think to be able to confront something, you have to be able to sit with it. And I'm not talking about putting on boxing gloves and confronting somebody. That's not the kind of confrontation that I'm speaking of. I'm speaking about a dialogue with the idea. Because if Griffith presented himself as femto to us, if he really showed up, well, we're gonna run away from him. We're gonna blast nukes on this guy. That's just really what we're going to do.
Right.
We won't even try to converse with it. There will be no conversation, and there will be no spiritual, philosophical confrontation. That's what I'm pointing towards to. And Miura decided to go for this femboy fucking twink.
Yeah, I felt the hatred of that one.
Yeah. He chose this specific representation because I think that when this person shows up at your doorstep, not naked, but in his in his full set of armor.
Sorry, go ahead.
When he, if a person like this shows up on a pedestal and everybody else bows to him, it makes you ask, should I bow too? And there is no better way to do that than wielding your pen or your pencil and then drawing the most beautiful thing possible. And not to go into gender dialogue, but I think as a guy, when you're punched by a guy, you want to punch back, right?
Yeah.
But when you're punched by a girl, you kind of like, wait. You kind of put up your hands and then wonder what the hell is going on. Imagine if it's the same if it's a baby or a cute dog. Like if a cute dog bites your feet, you're like, whoa, what's going on? But if it's a bulldog and it bites you, you shoot it in the head, right?
You're right.
So you don't get to think, you get to react, and Miura makes you question your own instincts. And that's the fantastic thing about this story, because it's incredibly archetypal, because we encounter so many things like this every day of our lives, and Griffith is just he's the top of that pyramid of things to question.
Yeah, I think to sort of add on to it, now kind of going to the gut side of it, and it was something I discussed in the Lost Children video that I did, but I think one of my, and it's one of the most iconic moments as well in Berserk, is the scene he has with Jill after the Rosine fight.
I love that.
Yeah, where she's begging him to take him away, whisk him away to somewhere that's better, this paradise, and Guts obviously says, look around me. This is what surrounds me, this is what follows me, and then there is no paradise for you to escape to. And what's fascinating to me is that the way that Guts is drawn, kind of covering Jill, it's almost like if this was not all black robes and an all black scene, it's almost like Guts is a saint in that moment, in that illustration at the end there. And afterwards, Jill sort of reaches the realization that, the gray skies do pass and blue skies will come. But it's sort of I think the aspect that there is truth in darkness in the story of Berserk. Yes. And that's always kind of been one of the parts of it that those of us who love the series try to stress, and it's never been dark for the sake of it. There's always intention with the dark moments in Berserk, and it really is sort of that contrast between the two of them when it comes to Guts and Griffith, where Griffith is the falsehood of a dream and sort of the falsehood of paradise, promising people that this person is going to show up and make all their problems go away. I mean, even for somebody who's the most devout Christian in the world, respectfully, not all your problems are going to go away, and they know that. They know that they have to live day to day with their struggles and their sins, right? Yeah. And so I've always felt like that is what has made Guts such a fascinating character, and part of the struggle that he goes through, and Miura illustrates it so well, and eventually when the Berserker armor becomes a thing, it is that struggle taking physical form, but it is sort of the reality that you're going to have to go to war with yourself and with the things that happen in the world every day. And on a day-to-day basis, part of the struggle is to not give in. And that seems to be sort of one of the things that you mentioned, sort of the integration of the shadow, the way that we're able to take some of those negative realities or negative traits and use them for good, allow them to be productive so that we're able to go out into the world and be of some benefit instead of be this force of mass chaos going, pardon the pun, berserk on everything we see. And I think that's sort of the part of it where you know, obviously from an art standpoint, he does such a good job of when to make a scene dark and when not to. But when it pertains to Berserk itself and the story, it's something that is apparent not only in the art, but in its two primary characters, and therefore some of the core messages and dilemmas of the story itself. And I feel like I don't really, with the exception of Sakamoto and Kubo, that pop up to my mind, I don't think there is a more beautiful marriage of all of those things. Like I think that's part of what makes Berserk so special to me, is I think some mangaka lead towards the story aspect of it, and others lean a little more towards the art at times. And yet there's some that they kind of max out both. And yeah, I don't know how to better word it in the moment. I think he just has his moments where you just sit back and you go, fuck, this is it, like you said, it's confrontational. It's confrontational. And I think some of the best stories that are confrontational, they ask a lot of questions and they're not always as keen on giving you the answers. And they sort of allow, and crazy because I'm just going through the different panels, but this one also is one that stands out in my mind quite a lot. And I'm looking at it as well as I'm looking at the one with Guts and Jill. And it's sort of, it's kind of beautiful. It's almost like Guts is providing the comfort he never got. This is the world that you live in, and you've got to pick up your sword and fight.
I have this quote that I encountered. I don't know where it comes from, but I found it incredibly touching, and maybe it's going to serve the purposes of this conversation. I don't know where it comes from. I just copied it from someone. Mm-hmm. If your morals have never been tested, you don't have morals. You have a set of hypotheticals. You can't say that you can't be corrupted if you've never been in an opportunity to be corrupted. I think that these images, or more specifically how Miura has created them, it's a shame that we really don't know much about Miura, and maybe that's for the better. But it would be incredibly insightful if we knew what his life was like, or what things he's went through, or the things that he's witnessed, because it would speak more to what his story is. But I think at the same time, the reason why I think it's better that we don't know is we could treat the material as it is. You know, we don't have to let it.
There's no bias.
There's no bias
based off of what we know about his life. Yeah,
and with just how amazing Miura is, just look at these. These are more than enough to do that. If your morals have never been tested, you don't have morals. You have a set of hypotheticals. You can't say that you can't be corrupted if you've never been in an opportunity to be corrupted. I think that statement, whoever said it, shows these two so much. You have Guts, who has gone through so much. He's made a lot of mistakes. Let me pull up that thing that you just sent. It must be that malice. Your life cannot be without hatred, but that hellfire that has kept you on your feet until this day is striving to incinerate even those you consider irreplaceable. And so it becomes shackles which make your sword heavy and blunt. Well, I have something that I want to say, but I'm trying to look for the right words for it. Like, I could feel the emotion right now as I'm looking through all of these panels and going through the conversation that we've been having. I don't know Miura, but I think that he's a dreamer. I think that he is so in touch with, let's just call it the ethereal, the subconscious. I think he's so in touch with it that he's able to craft these images that speak beyond our persona. It enters the deepest part of us. I don't know how he does it. All I know that he does. And to go back to that black and white discussion, he's able to capture what it feels like to sleep alone in your room at 12 in the morning. He's able to make you look at these images and just, I'm running out of words just looking at this.
Yeah, man, it's unfortunate that he passed away, man, because that is a one of a kind guy. That shit is absurd. I think that's the part of it as well, is that he understood contrast between his characters, and he understood that if you wanted to present the story in a way that allowed for it to have the emotional weight that it had, I think he understood that it needed to be, like you said, confrontational, and that explains a lot of the explicit nature of it. But yet also the fact that some of the most emotionally haunting images in all of Berserk are the ones that aren't violent. You know, like out of all the scenes, right, where what happened to Guts as a child, the one that sticks with you the most isn't when it's happening, because that grotesque, like that disgusts you, of course. But it's that moment where he's hugging his sword, and fuck, man. Yeesh.
I think it's something that we discussed a while back about darkness, and I think you called me out on it when I said that Berserk is dark, but it's also truthful, and you do have a point with that, I admit, because it's still a dark subject. Not everybody is able to stomach a lot of these things.
No, not at all.
Especially with the gore and all the, you know, just the abuse,
the sexual evils that occur in the story.
Sexual evils that occur. So it's really heavy, and for a lack of a better term, it's dark. Like, it's really dark. But I want to go back to that, and I think we've been beating around the bush in some way about the truth of the matter is, and I think this is where I'm having a tough time expressing myself, because right now I admit I'm emotionally affected by this. I've already read this story several times, but I'm looking at this and I'm there again. Like,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I can't count how many times I've passed through this page. I can't count how many times I've flipped through this, and just I felt like Guts and Jill at the same time.
Yeah.
And I want to try and not go into my personal life, because that's not the point of the video. So I'm still going to be as controlled as I can. But Berserk has a way of turning our deepest fears and frustrations, our shadows, our worries, into actual entities. Entities made manifest for the struggler to go through. And I think that speaks a lot, not just to Miura's art, but also the cosmology that he's created. And so I think it's this is a good jumping point to talk about the world that he's made, because the world that he's made is something that intentionally crosses the line from ordinary into extraordinary, from normal to paranormal. And whether you believe in such things or not, Berserk is able to convey that on such a primal level that when you look at this, and maybe you don't believe in spirits, maybe you do, but you recognize that it's speaking to you, and it's so metaphorical of your own situation, whatever it is. Whether you're struggling alone, whether you have a family, whether you've lost somebody, when you look at this and you see the grieving eyes of this child, and how there is this attempt to grasp onto hope, which is so represented by this. And I think you worded it out really well, that you're affected not when Guts is damaged, but you're affected when he tries to seek refuge. He tries to have someone to hug and hold. And I think that is such a universal experience. Everybody goes through something. Everybody suffers. Not everybody has someone to suffer with. And oh man, it's just...
Yeah, because ultimately one of the big messages of Berserk is companionship.
Yes.
And sort of how with Guts, you know, there is that moment when he leaves the Band of the Hawk where he kind of thinks to himself, where he's like, oh man, maybe my purpose lies with being with those people. And then unfortunately things didn't quite pan out. Yeah, I think in a strange way, what Guts and Griffith represent, I think also represent the type of stories you get. You know, with Griffith, it's a fairy tale, and sure, it's a pretty fairy tale, but how much of it really makes you sit with yourself, make you think, make you confront, make you grow as a person, instead of just look at this thing in awe and go, oh, this is beautiful, and then that's it. Versus what Guts would be, and what I think the story of Berserk is, which is something that, yes, it's heavy, yes, it's something that's dark and surrounded in blackness, but it's cathartic, and it makes you confront things, and then it makes you go, I'm capable of standing up and walking and struggling and enduring. And I think sometimes, with some people, they need to hear that they're doing okay and they're doing just fine.
Yeah.
And that their life isn't defined by productivity. But yet sometimes people need to hear that the only person who's going to save you is you.
I like how you... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, and however that, goes about is very personal.
That is true. I like how you mentioned the fairy tale and how Griffith is essentially a fairy tale brought to life, and how consequential that is, because I think people fantasize of a fairy tale life, whether you're born in the province, whether you're born in the city, whether you have no money or you were born in the middle class, even the rich. Everybody has this innate desire for comfort, for care, to be oblivious to what is going on, to go to the grocery and go to aisle 6 and know that their favorite product is there, and to do that every single day, to boot up Netflix and there's no worry, there's nothing. You know that the world is in order. I think humans essentially thrive when they believe that there is order, no matter how false that order is. It's just our default. It's our go-to. And I think that we're like this because it's an extrapolation, it's an extension of what it's like to be a child. Because no matter if you're 20, whether you're 30 or 40, there's still a part of us that's looking for that childlike wonder, that childlike care. The same way perhaps that we were coddled and looked out for by our parents or our grandparents. And when we're about to fall, somebody tosses a pillow to catch her, to break that fall. And we just want an adult version of that the further we grow up. And the most charismatic of people, whether it's true or not, are able to simulate that pillow, that fairy tale. And to tie this a little bit into Dune, I think that's what Frank Herbert was warning about. For figures like Griffith, for figures like Paul Atreides, no matter how heroic or how fantastic they might seem to us, because we're all just looking for a sense of wonder. We're looking for a way to transcend our current situation while at the same time having no change at all. But I think that's the essential lie. Transcendence requires change, and change is difficult. Change is confrontational. And to go back to drawing, you can't learn how to draw if you don't know how to change. You can't learn how to write if you don't recognize that your sentence is not working, and you ask somebody to read it and then they go back with corrections. Not everybody is able to do that. It's very hard to look at yourself in the mirror and see the spots on you, to see the darkness that's present in you. And Berserk is a fantastic encapsulation of that phenomenon. Where you have people just wanting to be taken care of but needing to realize that there's no paradise for you to escape to, and you must be the person to commit to that change. So this is an illustration that I did, and it's it's guts, but I still recall drawing the sketch for this, and it took me roughly 2 hours. And then I worked on Guts's face, and I think it took me another 2 hours. And then I worked on his physique, and that was probably 3 hours plus the armor. And then another 2 hours for the legs. And then when I started to do the shading, that was an extra hour, and so on and so forth. So imagine just this one illustration, and I did this over the course of a few days, and I think this would total to maybe 16 overall hours. Just for this one illustration, and I was doing this digitally, and there's no background to this, and I was juggling this with commissions and other stuff like that. And so whenever I look at something like this, I immediately have this this kind of itch, like, holy shit, I know how much time this probably took. And that's just with me referring to the time it took to complete the page and not even conceptualize what the page is. Those are two separate endeavors.
Even assuming if he worked at 2 to 3 times the speed that, for example, you worked on that illustration, or what, you know, any other artist worked on. They say he was the fastest and he could do this within 3 times the speed. Like you said, there's still the fact that he had to conceptualize the page, and this is one fucking page in an entire chapter.
Just thinking about that, just pondering on that.
300 plus chapter series. I'm sorry. This has been going on since the 80s.
Yes, and during his first few chapters, he was doing it traditionally. It's only at a certain point that he shifted to digital to save time. So imagine having to do a lot of these with pen and ink, with actual screen tones before the conversion into a digital workflow.
Spilled ink incorrectly.
Yeah, imagine crafting a page and then making a mistake, and you have to battle with that. So,
dude, you spill a beer on top of that, I'd retire. I'd just be like, you know what, y'all ain't getting the ending. I'm done.
I'm not saying I'm a Miura, but I share in that frustration. I share in the difficulty of that. So I understand that being an artist. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one who does. And just also deciding when to apply full blacks, when to apply negative scratches to create this kind of shading, how to light the scene, to set up the references. That takes time.
And there's no blur filter on it. That's the craziest part, is that there's still this level of depth, and despite all the detail, things stand out.
You can zoom here and you can see all of those tentacles, and then once you zoom out, it works.
Yep. And then if you scroll up, he did all those pages before this, and dude, I'm telling you, the stretch he goes on, and here real quick, just because I want these pages to be on screen as well.
Yeah.
Here I'll send these moments, but when Ganishka is actually walking.
Yeah.
You know, and you get to see that. Yeah, you get the super far away shot, and then you get this type of shot, and then you get this, and then you get this, and then eventually down the line, you just get, like, I mean, all, now mind you, what I'm about to send you is all within a 4 chapter span of each other. These 10 pages I'm about to send in bulk are in a 4 fucking What do you mean? What do you mean, man? And then, like, the eclipse had to have been emotionally exhausting to draw. Like, I just, like, the mental stamina is absurd for that scene as well. Because, like, if I send, like, this bulk here of shots from the eclipse real quick, it's the most absurd. I mean, man, like, what are we talking about, you know?
Yeah. And I think Berserk was done traditionally
at that time, right?
Yeah. I think
because that was the 90s, I believe. Yep. Yeah, the 90s. So all of that would have been traditional, and then I think once you went to digital, it just was like, oh, I can do more.
I think he was quoted about that. I think it was his editor who had to like tell him to stop because he was ogling over
pixels and stuff. Yeah, man. Like, I mean, I will say here also, you know, that I think I'm personally not as much of a fan once we start entering Falconia. I think you and I had a conversation about it before, where I think the sweet spot for his art was when he was adapting his physical into the digital realm.
Yep.
And it maintains a lot of the anatomy and the appearance of the characters that we really liked before it got really 3D-ish. But like that shot right there, man, whatever, bro. Do we have anything, like, I mean, obviously you do, I don't. I have awe and envy and and anger and awe and admiration. Like, that must have been like, could you imagine being the editor and seeing him zoom in? How far can you zoom in on this image?
And this is even a low resolution.
Right. So, like, imagine you have high resolution, you're super zoomed in, and you see him, like, erasing something and then zooms out and you can't even notice the difference. I understand the frustration of the editor, but man.
And I'm going to use my artwork again to kind of display what this is, because Like if you look at this, it looks complete, right? But I was even working on these. So I was thinking about all of these little tidbits that people might not even be aware of. And this is for a character that I didn't create. So I just wanted to painstakingly capture what Miura did. So even these, like I had to factor these in. So how much more for something like this?
Dude.
And these are all original designs. So it's not just the ideation of the sequencing, it's not just the composition, it's not just the time it takes to render things, it's also designing each of these characters to put on the page.
While still keeping in mind story and the emotional consistency throughout.
So that really takes a toll on somebody, especially me being an artist. Like I know what it feels like to finish something approximating this, not exactly this, but you know, completing an illustration, you kind of want to take a breath. Like maybe when you finish a video, you're like, oh my god, I'm finally finished.
Yeah.
But the thing with the physical medium is you want to look at it, and sometimes, me personally, even though my client likes the work, even though the people who look at it like the work, sometimes I'm disgusted by what I draw. Sometimes I like if I illustrated this, maybe I'd zoom in here and I would be ticked off that I should have added another spike here. Like I don't know what Miura is thinking about, but being an artist and knowing other artists, there's just so many things that we only get to see with our own illustrations. And so who's to know what part of this would have probably ticked Miura off? What part of this would have made him like, this could have been longer or shorter or something like that? We don't know. And that has a psychological effect, at least in my experience.
But it truly is something special, because there's always this, I do believe that one Bob Ross quote where it's like, talent is a pursued interest.
Yes.
And there is that rare circumstance where you get somebody who you look at their parents, right? Like Miura's, both of his parents were artists. And you look at the, I guess, talent, you look at the environment they were raised in. Then there are these, and we talk about it a lot with sports. They're intangibles. There are qualities that make up a human being. And the fact that those qualities remained and intensified throughout, like to have that drive when you're already one of the most successful creators of all time in your niche, to the point where you break into the mainstream and redefine what the medium is capable of. I'm not gonna lie to you, after like Conviction, I probably would have just sat back and scratched my nuts. Like you wouldn't have seen a single fucking chapter from me beyond that point, dude. I would have just been like, I'm done, you know, and I would have fucked off. Like granted, he played Idolmaster apparently, but like, like it's like, why? Like again with Togashi, he went through all that he went through with Yu Yu and still made Hunter x Hunter. It's like, what?
There's this
man. No, yeah, like what why other than you know the obligation maybe they feel to the reader to finish it. It's like, what is going on in their mind and their soul to where they're like, I need to see this story through. I need to answer this question that I've been asking myself my entire life while I've obsessively worked on this.
There's this interview that, I don't know if you watch Diary of a CEO, but it's by Stephen Bartlett. And he has different people come on to his podcast. But he was interviewing Jimmy Carr. He's a famous British comedian. He has a wonderful UK sense of humor. But more than being a comedian, he's a great intellectual. And Stephen asked him, "Do you still feel like you're a comedian who has reached like the apex of his career?" And he was asked pretty much the question that you were pretty much musing about, like why did Miura still continue past the golden age and not scratch his balls, in the same way that why did Jimmy Carr still continue his comedian occupation, for lack of a better term? And Jimmy's reply was really eye-opening. He commented on the quote that it's not the journey, it's the destination, right? That it's something that you often get to hear, because a lot of people would be like, oh, I have to reach this position, and then somebody would counter them. It's not the journey. It's not the destination. It's the journey, right? But it's amazing how he added more to that, and he was like, it's neither. It's who you become. It's being. And to him, as a comedian, he loves nothing more than to partake in such an interaction with an audience. And we don't know Miura, but given that he could have stopped at any certain point and called it quits, he still continued, because like Guts, I think he was struggling with something. I think with any good author throughout history, there's a struggle with being. There's a struggle with identity that is only answered by actually tackling life with a skill set that you've been given. And it was just eye-opening for me as well, because I want to be an author. I'm not yet. I'm an artist, yes. I know how to write for sure, I think, but I'm untested. Nobody else has read the works that I've done, so I can't even lay claim to that. And I always thought, like, what would happen to me once I ever get that goal? And there's this fear in me that, is it just the goal of being published? Is that my only goal? And hearing Jimmy's words and now having this conversation with you, I'm reminded that it's the privilege of writing. It's the responsibility of actually putting your mark into the world the way these greats have. It's being. I think that's the most important thing. And I think Miura is probably one of the finest examples of that.